Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast.
So it started about 3 years ago. I was working in the gaming space, and I saw this trend with kids, especially when COVID hit, with social isolation, depression, and really a lack of leadership skills and resiliency. And then I saw the veteran community looking for, they were also isolated. They were looking for something. A lot of them looking, as you're transitioning out, looking for purpose, meaning. And I saw that gaming was the connector. So gaming could connect those communities. And I saw that just because I was working specifically in the esports space with a nutrition company. And I'm like, I wonder if I create a foundation really to kind of bridge the gap between the communities. And it will give the veterans a way to help, with mentorship, finding purpose, help finding meaning. It'll give the youth a way to find leaders, to find, help build resiliency and everything like that. So started the foundation, and we started doing events where we bring together active duty veterans and youth and kind of combine them into play. And so since then, since the last 3 years, we've kind of expanded into, we have a Twitch stream, we do this, but it's all community connection through gaming. And then we try to add in physical sports too, to get them moving. But gaming is a connector, because if you're deployed and your kid's at home, what can you do? You could game with them. So we've really been trying, really working to grow, build through, just connection, finding purpose, finding meaning, and helping to, drive mentorship and community for both the veteran and the youth community.
Very cool, man. It's an interesting dynamic. And my father and I were just having a conversation. My father's in town for the Father's Day weekend. We were just talking literally like 10 minutes ago about, just like technology and how fast it's advancing, and, kind of some of the scary sides of that, and AI and Terminator 2 coming to real life, and, war games with Matthew Broderick, and like all this like old kind of fantasy stuff that's now kind of on our doorstep. But then also, and somewhat obviously, the upsides to, technology and the advancements we've made. And is there another Ken on this line, or are you on two different lines, Ken? Because I'm getting some like wind and birds. I feel like it's coming from somewhere else.
Hold on, let me double check the audio filtering. Yeah,
I've been meaning to tell you.
I was stuck in traffic for 90 minutes, so I'm like way behind.
Okay, and now you're coming through on. I feel like you're on
I
two
was supposed
platforms.
to have my studio set up and everything, so.
Yeah, you're coming through on two separate audio streams. So right now you've got one of them muted and one of them's not. Okay, cool. I think you're good now.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah,
so
I got two cameras.
I got you. Hey, technology, when it works, it's great. And then when it's not, every fucking thing goes to shit. Hey, no, but Josh, and Ken, I wanted to just with the rundown, and I appreciate that. I'd like to broker an intro between you and a buddy of mine. His name's John, and I'll let him give his like full spiel. But basically, he's starting up this in-person spectator sport that basically takes like paintball, mixes it with airsoft, and mixes it with like actual vets and like military members and like more up-to-date equipment, only as like a spectator sport like the NFL. It's a wild concept. I've kind of come on board unofficially at this point for now as like an advisor to them in that initiative. They've been going now for about 5 years in development, but they still have some considerable fundraising and things to do before it becomes real. But just the linkage between his vision and the video game space is right on top of each other, because he sees an overlap in target audience and demographic. Those interested in these types of activities and entertainment is within the video game space as well. So as you were talking, there's an obvious synergy there between this platform and initiative and what John's working on. So if you're cool with it, I'll just broker an email intro. You guys can maybe have a conversation. I think it's worth at least 15 minutes to see if there's maybe something there you guys can collab on, or, whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that.
All right, cool.
We're always trying to partner with other orgs. So that would be awesome.
Cool.
I'm pretty sure I got hit up with that too. So that sounds ultra familiar.
Really?
Said the name, I would. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Maybe it's a double tap. Whatever. Can't hurt.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, not at all. And speaking of Chicago.
Hi. Hi, sorry I'm late. Work whooped me in.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm
April,
fantastic.
how are you? It's nice to meet you.
Both you and Ken look so official, ready for the world. Got your hats on the same way.
Official and ready for the world. I like that. That's a good quote. I'm gonna use that.
Official and ready
Hi,
for the world.
Josh.
There it is.
Hi, April.
Awesome.
April's on our team. She's out of IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology. April, you want to kind of give your background on how you're attached to the military?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a military brat. My mother joined the Marine Corps in 1963. She tried 3 times till she got in, and we lived at Pendleton, Kentucky, and Chicago, and absolutely love everything about the life, and supporting any way I can is my mission. I'm sad I didn't get to serve. I got sidetracked. So this is my way of giving back.
Outstanding. Good stuff. I love it.
Well, so this is a little bit different than some of the things you've done in the past 4 or 5 months, maybe, but I've been tracking the things that you've been up to, and very I'm honored, man, that you're here, and it's a great thing what you're doing, getting the exposure out, getting yourself out, educating people on what we do here in the uniform and other aspects that people don't know. They may see things on TV, the news, or in movies or whatever, but you're bringing it to life. And for the folks who, didn't take the vertical trajectory from a traumatic experience, and you have, I think it's a very valuable experience that you're here showing that it is possible not only to take a vertical route, but to improve oneself and have a really good outlook on life about it, and as you well know, there's a lot of folks out there who haven't viewed their trauma through a opportunistic light, or a challenge. And we're here. One of our messages here, or probably our primary message here, is that it's never too late, right? It's never bad as you think it is. And there's always a way to make the situation work for you. And so one of the big things of why we wanted to have you here is that you are a living, breathing example of someone who's taken trauma and post-traumatic stress and created energy out of it, and then give it back to the world in a better way to make the world, society, community, and your peers and the next generations better. And I really honor you for that.
Thank you.
I know it takes a lot. I've been there, had a brain injury, I've been burned to death, crushed, shot up, blown up, and it takes a lot to not have a volunteer victim mentality. And that's really what I want to talk about a bit today.
Perfect.
And you can go anywhere you want, obviously. But what we like to do is give you about however long you want to intro yourself. And I know there's a lot to you. But you can take as long as you want or as short as you want. You can just say, hey man, Nick Lavery kicked some ass and I have a great viewpoint on life, and I'm glad to be here. You can do that, or you can do your whole bio if you want. And then a topic I want to hit is how gaming has influenced your life. We've had, I don't know, about 4 people on here who first was like, yeah, I never really gamed. I don't really game. But as we dig into it, they've always gamed, and we've drawn complete circles from their gaming experience as a kid growing up to what they do in life. It's always been a direct correlation. So very interested to explore that with you as well.
Yeah, I am as well. You got
sense?
me thinking. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's one thing I do is I get people thinking. So
I love it.
Josh here has entrusted me to run the show, and I like to bring that out in people and bring a different perspective and a different story and a different kind of viewpoint on folks. So what we're going to do is just, I'm not going to do a break, guys. I'm just going to have him roll into it, because I'm going to bring whatever we just talked about, that whole conversation, into the video as well, into the podcast. So I'd like to introduce Nick Lavery, honored and a cherished guest for our podcast today. And Nick, would you just mind gracing us with a little bit of your past and who you are, if you don't mind?
Yeah, man. Hey, Ken, Josh, April, I appreciate the time and for having me on. It's a privilege for me. The relatively brief bio, and we can dive in here, as you guys really want to. Originally from Boston, Mass. I was a nomad as a kid, and as we kind of get into kind of some of my upbringing and whatnot, it's something I tend to message pretty early. I was the new kid in school every year, all the way up until really I hit college. I was living in a new place, and that's a challenge, for young people in particular, really even for adults. It's hard. So for me, growing up was a challenge socially. I struggled to make friends and keep friends because I was the new kid moving around, so picked on, bullied. I grew up this really scared, insecure kid. And when I got into high school, the Marine Corps was going to be an outlet for me to gain what I really wanted, and that was strength. And I wanted to be respected. Becoming a Marine was going to be the way I did that. What stopped that from happening was I started getting recruited to play football in college, which was the only reason why I went to school. I was a horrible academic. I did the bare minimum just to slide by. Had it not been for athletics during my upbringing and college in particular, I would not have gone to college. So ended up going to school, really just to play ball. And then my sophomore year was 9/11. So, I had just turned 19, 10 days before September 11th, 2021. And I can remember watching my fellow countrymen make the choice between burning alive in a building or jumping out of it, and seeing that in real time. Just the rage that began coursing through my body was quite tremendous. And I really struggled to stay in school. I was going to drop out and enlist, and because I knew we were about to get into a fight and I wanted to be a part of that, purely based out of anger. Ultimately listened to some mentors and some friends and family. I stayed in school, I grinded out my degree, and now it's 2006, and we're surging in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So the game not only is still being played, but it's being ramped up. We continue to double down on the things that we're doing. And that catalyst moment for me, although it happened, 5 years prior, was still burning within me. So I knew that was what my future held. So I decided to enlist, wanted to be in special operations, ended up choosing the Army to come in as a special forces recruit, otherwise known as an 18 X-ray contract, which gives guys off the street the opportunity to bypass serving in the conventional Army and just go straight into the special forces pipeline. That's the route I went. And then after about little over 2 years of training was when I earned my Green Beret. And I've been serving as an active duty Green Beret really ever since. That's now been 16 years, which is wild to say out loud. You guys can attest to this and how fast it goes by, even something that at times is really hard. And if, a minute can feel like an hour because you're going through so much discomfort and struggle and stress. But, when you look up and you look back and, 16 years is just like burned by. It's like, wow, man, it goes by fast, especially when you love what you do. I'll touch on it quickly. One of the more impactful moments that has altered the trajectory of my life was on my third deployment into Afghanistan in the fall of 2012. I was wounded in combat on 3 separate occasions, the third of which being the most severe, ultimately resulted in the amputation of my leg above the knee. The Army did their best to have me medically retired. I had to dig in and refuse that end state, a fight in which I won, and then began earning my spot back onto my detachment, which was something that hadn't happened before. An above the knee amputee going back onto an ODA and then back into combat. So I had set my sights on a target that was pretty high and really difficult to see, but I believed it was possible. And I believe that it is what I was put on this earth to do. And really that is what enabled me to do all the really hard things that was required for me to make that into a reality, which I can proudly say I was successful at doing that. Returned back to the team, and I've deployed to combat since many, many times. I've deployed to other types of operational requirements throughout the world, many times as well. And, I say it's a it's a lifestyle in which I'll do for as long as I can, but that's really not accurate. Like the more accurate way to say it is I'll continue to do what I do for as long as I'm an asset to the guys to my left and right. And I think it's an important distinction, because as much as I love this business and this lifestyle that I've chosen to live, we have to be objective, and we have to make sure that we are an asset on the ground and we are an asset to our teammates. And unfortunately, it's not a lifestyle you can live forever. You know, it takes its toll physically, mentally, emotionally, it takes its toll on the family. There are tremendous costs and sacrifices that come with this. But I can say that it's not only a life of passion for me, but it's also one of purpose as well. So I'm extremely grateful that I've had the opportunity to live the way I live and continue to, you know, serve those in which I was put on this earth to serve.
So I love that aspect, because I too was, you know, trying to forcibly medically retire me as well. And I fought back, and it just didn't match like my vision of, no, this is not part of the plan. So when you got that, and I mean, your diagnosis is something that is just, this is just the way it is, Nick. Like, you can't go back to active duty. This doesn't make any sense. Like, you have this diagnosis, you have this situation. This is what people do. So can you tell me, most people will fight back because they have a risk aversion, right? Or a loss aversion, where they're like, whoa, this is, you know, this is a paycheck, and, you know, like, this is what I need to do, and this is my identity. And they do it out of like fear. But it seems like you did it out of love. And so can you just kind of walk us through a little bit when you experience that, and when you're talking to the doctors, and maybe you're probably talking to a Rilo specialist or something, right? Like a medically retired specialist person, right? Can you just maybe like immerse us in that moment, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, man, it's a great point. I would agree with your assessment that I was operating emotionally in a position of love versus fear. Fear existed for sure. That was there. You know, fear of the unknown and fear of, if this isn't what you do, if this isn't who you are, then who are you? That was present. And I think that that's expected, and then that's okay. I also think it's on us individually to then take that and then decide deliberately to wield and deploy love and positivity. That's an option for us. I chose that route. And what enabled me to do that was the sense of purpose that I have with what I do. And, you know, purpose is a term that has multiple different definitions, and people resonate with that term differently. My interpretation of purpose is being part of something bigger than yourself that creates an impact on others. That's just what it means to me. You know, passion, which is an equally powerful ingredient for me, was present, but passion's for me, right? Passion is what I love to do. I love what I do. I love the way I live. Passion's for me. Purpose is for you, or purpose is for somebody else. But when you can combine those two things, like a 1-2 punch combo, it becomes quite powerful. And I'm fortunate that I was able to find both of those within the same exact thing, which is a unique place to be. There are many people on the planet right now that are well into their 40s, 50s, 60s that have yet to identify either one of those two things within their own lives. And I think that is, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality. In fact, I would say it's an unfortunate norm, meaning the majority struggle with that. And those of us that are lucky enough to find it, or we just dedicate time and effort to finding it, we're in the minority. I was able to discover that at the age of 25, 26 years old ish, when I was in Afghanistan for the first time, you know, and I came into this lifestyle as a short-term thing. I was going to come in, 5-year contract, get to the tip of the spear, kick some ass, get some payback, get out, and figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. That was the game plan, right? I learned when I began doing it that it took on a much larger meaning for me, both within my heart, passion, and then within my soul, purpose. And there just was not another conduit I could imagine that would give me that same level of fulfillment. It was, this is why you were put on this earth. You are a warfighter. You are a warrior. You are a member of the Praetorian Guard. You will dedicate yourself to a society in which you will defend at all costs, no matter what. And I believe that with every ounce of my being. It took me doing to have that realization. It took me executing to see it. Now, is that the way to do it? I don't think necessarily. That's just what it took for me. One of the things I talk about a lot is, establishing an internal dialogue and gaining a hard truth reality to, who you want to be and what you want to do, and initiating those conversations deliberately or consistently to try to let yourself talk to yourself so you can speak yourself into existence. That wasn't the case for me. I do promote that. It's just, for me, it took executing mostly on emotion, that being anger, and deciding to do something. And then when I began doing it was when it was like, oh, wow, this has taken on a whole nother dimension of meaning and value to me personally. So I mentioned that to answer your question, Ken, is, when I was going through this process, which for me began in the intensive care unit at Walter Reed while I was still fighting for my life, the decision was made then that I will go back to doing what I do. And, I use the word decision because it's accurate, but in a lot of ways, I didn't see it as a choice. It was, this is why you were put on this planet. There is no alternative route for you to take. This is who you are. And what that enabled me to do was disregard the what am I going to do question, which is a place that a lot of people get stuck, whether that's on the backside of trauma or just a bad day or year or not. They just find themselves floating through life asking themselves, like, what am I going to do? What am I doing here? Well, I knew the answer to the what question, which allowed me to proceed everything to the how am I going to do this question. And those are two entirely different questions, right? One is trying to determine the thing. The other is just an equation that needs to be solved. It's a problem that needs to be solved. And when you know the answer to any equation, it becomes increasingly easier to solve the equation, right? Like 2 + X = 3. Well, I know the answer is 3. So now I just got to figure out X, right? That's the way I looked at it. It was an algorithm. It was an equation. And I had some constants in there, 2, 3, 5. There were a whole ton of letters, a whole lot of X's and Y's and Z's and A's and B's, things that I didn't know, a lot of unknown variables, but I knew the answer. So it was just a matter of breaking this massively complex problem down into a series of very simple solutions.
Even though I never passed any math classes, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I've never heard that before, but I love it. So 1 + X = 3, and 3 is your outcome. 1 is like the situation you're in right now, and X is just like the steps. If there's multiple X, Y, Z, those are just the steps to get to the outcome, right? And so let me just make sure I understand it, and I can maybe encapsulate it in my words. So you're sitting there, and the realization is these people see a system, right? See an outcome that is like, oh, this guy needs to be retired. You're going to push him to the VA, and they're going to take care of him, and blah, 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 and then not my problem. And you're going, whoa, that's not my outcome. My outcome is this, right? All the steps to there, I don't really care about. They're going to come into place, and when they come, I'm going to seize upon them because I'm going to return to active duty. I'm going back to my team. I'm going to redeploy again, right? And you basically just said, I have this vision, and this doesn't make sense. What you're saying doesn't make sense. You all need to get on board, right? And so you were just totally committed because previously you made sure that what you were doing was something that you loved. I don't think a lot of people do that. And I think you hit that right on the head. Is most people take a decision out of fear that, if I don't take this job, then I won't make money. Maybe something better will come down the line. The next thing you know, it's been, like you said, originally, it's been 16 years and I'm doing something I don't love. And all these other things are messed up, right?
Yeah, it's, the relationship between your circle is a delicate one, and our community can have a massive impact on us. And there's a lot of cliche statements and case studies that show that. But Ken, I rooted myself in a single word, and that's the word faith. Okay. Now, this has a very strong, biblical tone to it, which I've also grown into as well, but also a definition of faith is a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. I believed what I set my sights on was possible. Essentially, nobody around me saw it the same way. And initially, I would combat that with anger, like, well, what do you know? Like, get away from me. I would be angry about that. That was a relatively short-lived period of time for me, though, however, because I realized that this was coming at a place of love from people who cared about me. My father, my mother, my sister, my teammates, my friends. They didn't want to see me set my sights on something so outlandish that when I failed at it, it would send me into this negative spiral and I would be a disaster train wreck. It was out of love. And I was able to recognize that, this isn't because you don't believe in me. This isn't because you don't support me. You're afraid that I will be unsuccessful, which is what's likely because this has never happened before, right? So that's understandable. I was able to see it through that lens. And then when I was receiving that kind of external criticism or advice or counsel or judgment, I was able to just take that and say, you know what, hey, Dad, Ma, Adam, Brian, Tony, I appreciate, that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And genuinely mean that, but then also remain laser focused on my faith and my belief. Okay. Just like, my relationship with God has developed over the years. That is one that is unwavering. Okay. If I woke up tomorrow and every single other human being on this planet was an atheist, I would still have my belief in God. Okay. Like that is not moving no matter what. My belief in my future as a professional warfighter, as a Green Beret, into my lifestyle that I will get back to with that same level of conviction. So I was able to take that on, whether it was from an administrator going through the med board or a commander or another senior leader or some random person on the street. It didn't really make much of a difference to me. It was, okay, cool. Here's your opinion. Here's how I can leverage what you provide to me in terms of support, but I can stay focused on my objective anyway, and just believe it enough to remain on that track, regardless of who saw it the same way I did.
One of the things, so we have 3 values in the foundation. We have resilience, leadership, and mindfulness. I'm tying this to both resilience and leadership. Because the resilience it took to get through all that and everybody else thinking, well, no. Can you kind of dive into that resilience and like how that your mindset was when you're getting told you set this purpose and you set this outcome, right? How did you get from A to B with all of the noise? And like, what was the mindset? Because I know you've kind of talked about a little bit, but I really want to highlight the resilience part. And then I want to then touch on the leadership part, because since then, because, we originally got introduced after the Sean Ryan show, right? I heard you on the Sean Ryan show. I was like, oh, I was blown away. And I'm like, we got to get you on because your story is amazing. But the leadership, the resiliency, and even the mindfulness, because you had to be present in your mind to really know what you wanted. So can you kind of talk about that and kind of touch on that resiliency? And then now that you become like a leader in the community, how that's the transition's gone?
Yeah, absolutely. And resiliency is a huge topic that I focus on, and a word, maybe the word at the core of the how. How did I do it and how do I do it? That word is dead center and will come out consistently. I opened up talking about my upbringing and how challenging it was. My resiliency, my mental toughness, conditioning, because that's what it is. All right. Began for me at the age of about 5, in kindergarten, and just being picked on and struggling as a young person my entire life, all the way up until I was an 18-year-old, college student. Resiliency is a skill. Mental toughness is a skill. It requires reps. It requires exposure. It requires experience. It requires purposeful practice in execution of how you work through it. I can look back now with an enormous amount of gratitude for having had that conditioning begin for me as an extremely young person, because it did begin to callous my mind through those reps. It was really hard, but you know what? That's what is required to become mentally tough. Resiliency is forged through discomfort, period, right? Whether that happens for you as a kid or, unfortunately, which is a weird way to say it, if your initial exposure to these kinds of things isn't until later in life, well, you got some catching up to do, all right? People tend to misconstrue what it means to be tough. and they think of people with tattoos or muscles, or they're good at jujitsu, or they drive a Harley Davidson, or like this person's tough. Like when you look at them, you know, hockey players are a great example, right? What makes hockey players tough, right? Is it the fact that they are skating at 1,000 miles an hour and smash into people? Well, you know what? That's part of it, but really it's because they get their teeth knocked out in the first period and then they're back on the ice in the second period. It's their ability to take that discomfort to the face, literally in this example, but also figuratively, deal with that discomfort, and then continue pressing forward, right? You can also layer on how strategy and tactics apply into resiliency as well. Because if I just continue to smash my head in a wall trying to knock it down, and it knocks me over every time, and I keep getting back up and doing it over and over and over and over and over again, you know, you may be tough, but you're also lacking some tactics here on what we're going to do. Like Rocky Balboa, he just keeps getting up, and Apollo Creed's just burying him in the face. And you're like, man, you are tough, but like maybe put your hands up or like move. Like maybe we introduce like some strategy and some tactics in here to coincide with your mental toughness. You know, so like dealing with struggle and then dealing with failure, which is also part of resilience, like dealing with getting it wrong, dealing with messing it up, and reframing what that means. Whereas it hurts because it has to hurt. Getting it wrong has to hurt. It has to, mostly it's our pride and our ego, but that becomes the catalyst to then seek the wisdom that exists in failure. Like that's how you get better and stronger. And when you can start to weaponize failure and see it as an opportunity, now you're combining the ability to get back up after getting knocked down and then leveraging the fact that you got knocked down. Now you're creating an absolute weapon, because how do you stop someone who's not only going to keep getting back up and getting back in your face or back up moving forward, but get smarter and better every time that happens? How do you stop someone who's going to do that? And I could say it's a rhetorical question, because the answer is that you cannot stop that individual. It's impossible. They're going to keep getting up and learning and getting better every single time. So my resiliency began as a young person. It was amped up tremendously when I was in the hospital and trying to figure out how to live life as a one-legged guy. But I had this vision so clearly in my mind that it's what allowed me to physically and literally and sometimes figuratively get back up after getting it wrong countless times a day, and then start to see it for the value that it can bring. And then I'll tell you, man, what becomes possibly your greatest threat is entering into the realm of reckless. Okay. Like when you've decided that you can weaponize failure, where you start seeking it on purpose, you're stalking and hunting failure. I'm going to set this bar so high that I'm almost guaranteed to miss because I want the wisdom. You can quickly enter into the realm of reckless, like reckless insanity, where you're operating outside of the realm of strategy and tactics. But I'll tell you what, man, I would rather have a teammate alongside me who I have to pull those reins back a bit, rather than saying, hey, like, go for it. I would rather have to hold the chain than try to light a fire.
That's amazing. Yeah. And, double clicking on that to the leadership part, right? Because you had all these, you built the resilience, but then that key part is you keep standing back up, but it's then changing tactic. Like you said, there's that tactic part of it. So then now building into that leadership, you've been, the last few years, you've really become a leader in the community. Can you kind of talk about some of the leadership skills that you've learned and then how you've kind of developed those? Did they evolve? Did you see them? Did you notice that you've really become like, your social media follow, even since I started following you, is probably quadrupled. And you've become, you're now on most platforms, right? And you speak at these events. So can you talk, if I'm like say I'm a 22-year-old college student, just figuring out how to make my way in life, you've kind of helped me understand now the resilience, and like, I need to keep getting up, but then I don't just need to get up, I need to change my tactics. How do I become a leader? What are some skills that you've really developed? I'm in the gaming community. I'm 22 years old. I really haven't never been in a leadership position. I don't really have necessarily confidence to do that. How have you done it? What are some things that maybe you could kind of give examples as how to become a better leader? If, even with me personally.
Great is great stuff. And, you know, I have an entire leadership curriculum that I do teach. Our food is unconventional leadership. And, you know, that obviously pulls from the Green Berets and special forces and what we do, our primary mission being unconventional warfare. I'll say, you know, I'll use myself as an example here, which is something I talk about, particularly young people, you know, in the days of social media, you know, it can be really easy to see the cool guy photo and like put that on this like ridiculous pedestal. And whether that's me personally or anybody, you know, they're looking at the 17th version of a photo that's got 9 filters on top of it. And it's like, oh, I need to like do this. And it's like, hold on a second. Like, let's just like take a break, like take a pause. To put this in a leadership perspective, kind of through that lens, you know, in my opinion, the lowest form of leadership or influence, and those two words are basically synonymous, is based on your rank, your position. It's based on like what you are assigned on your chest: manager, supervisor, staff sergeant, your position. The only reason why people are doing what I'm suggesting or doing what I'm telling them is because I'm me and you're you, and I outrank you, or I am at a higher level of hierarchy or whatever that may look like. Is the lowest form of leadership, in my opinion. All right. I have learned that I, just using myself, have the ability to wield that based solely on that. Hey, this dude is a Green Beret badass, you know, whatever. I'm going to do whatever he says. And it's like, don't do that. You know, I live in the space of positive influence. Okay. That is what I do, but I would rather you not listen to what I'm suggesting based on the fact that I'm a Green Beret on this cool guy photo on top of the mountains with all the guns and the kits and the ammo and the grenades. I realize that is the entry point for all. However, my goal is to move beyond that as fast as humanly possible as an individual. And then when I'm dealing with individuals, if you look at kind of the extreme, and here's where I would rather people focus on, like the furthest phase of this leadership operation that you are conducting. And this is what I have in front of me right now as a reminder, is your ability to influence is based on who you are and what you represent. It's based on your values. It's based on the way you live your life. It's not based on the way you come in during a 30-minute meeting and what you say and how captivating and how persuasive you may be during this window. It's the way you live. It's who you are. And the people around you have seen it. They've heard it, sure, but they've seen it. They've smelled it. They've tasted it with enough consistency that you are able to influence them purely based on who you are and what you represent, and that level of respect that they have for you and you have for them. That, in my opinion, is at the extreme. And if you are a young person listening to this right now, there is one word that I challenge you to become intimately familiar with, if what I'm saying is of any interest to you. And that word is integrity. And that is an easy word to say. It's an easy word to throw around. It's an easy bumper sticker slogan, right? But if you talk about integrity being doing the right thing legally, ethically, and morally, regardless of who's watching, and you decide, because it's a choice, to front load that as part of who you are, like the decisions I'm going to make, the countless decisions I'm going to make every single day, I'm going to have this at the forefront of my mind. Again, easy to say, really difficult to do, particularly as young people, right? We are impressionable, vulnerable humans at that age. We want to fit in. We want to sit at the cool kid table at the lunchroom, if that's still a thing. I'm sure it is. We want to be popular. We want the girl or the guy or all of the social challenges that come with being a young person. It is really hot. Everyone that's in this room right now have all lived this. It's easy to say, it's difficult to do. Are you willing? Do you have the courage to go against the grain and prioritize your integrity, doing what you know is right according to your morals? The sooner you can begin to do that deliberately, the sooner it's going to become more automated. The sooner you're going to condition your mind to front load that. It's going to become more habitual. And like that is the goal, right? Consistency is essential for any progress, and habits enable consistency. It doesn't start that way. I don't give a shit if you're talking about eating a grilled chicken salad for lunch or going to the gym or reading 2 pages of a book at night. you have to discipline yourself to do it on purpose when you have to do it. And we're talking about decision-making through integrity. The sooner you start, the sooner it becomes more automated, the sooner it becomes easier, not easy, but easier to do over time. If your goal is to be that level of leader, that level of influence on others, create that kind of positive impact on others, the faster you begin operating in that capacity, the faster you can earn your position where you can influence and lead by virtue of who you are and what you represent.
But Nick, so the problem though with integrity is, in my opinion, yeah, I've been a person with zero integrity before, right? I during parts of my life, people don't have integrity because they feel that they're behind and they have to cheat, steal, whatever it is to get ahead. So the moment that you feel that you are ahead of the game, you can apply integrity because you know that you're secure within yourself. So can you explain a little bit, like for me, when I gained my integrity is when I joined the Air Force, I felt so far ahead because I wasn't dead, I wasn't homeless, I wasn't broke and poor anymore, that I was just like, I'm not losing any of this. Like, I'm so far ahead. So can you tell me a little bit about that? If I'm in my 20s and I see all this social media nonsense, people with 8-pack abs, you know, they're doing all these crazy things, they're driving all these really nice cars. I am bombarded, Nick, by people who seem to be decades ahead of me, who are my age, and I'm not there. Therefore, it's really hard for me to have integrity. Mm-hmm. Can you please help me rectify that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm in the same position, Ken. Me as a young person, all the way up until my college years, integrity meant nothing to me. And I made a lot of really horrible decisions, and I'm extremely fortunate that things ended up the way they did. Because for a while there, it looked like it was jail or dead. Those were my two routes I was on. I was able to get off that, and the military was the outlet that provided me that off ramp. And that, for me, same with you, is where integrity began to become a thing for me. I would say for me, I didn't start living with more integrity because I felt like I was ahead, more so as I was being influenced by those around me, and which is similar to what you just talked about, like social media and who you follow and the 8-pack abs and the Bugattis and like the whatever. We, and under most circumstances, can control who is in our circle, who is in our community, who is in our detachment, who our team is. And, you know, social media, internet has made the world really, really small, right? There was a time when our allies or our mentors or our proteges, what I refer to as the community tripod, you were limited, you were constrained to your geographic location. Like when I grew up as a young person, like there was no internet, you know, like you had teachers, coaches, parents, like friend, like next door neighbors, like that's what you had. Now it's limitless. You can choose whoever really you want to be around you. I think that while it without question is difficult, it is difficult. That same 20-year-old is deciding who he or she is letting influence them. They are deciding who they are following. They are deciding who they are paying attention to. There's an endless list of options out there. But if that one person assumes to take on the ownership of, I control who I allow in this circle, this is on me, this is a choice, which it is. That person decides. Whether it's in 3-dimensional form, you know, at school, like who am I going to sit with? Who are my friends? Who am I going to text with? Or who am I going to follow on Instagram? These are all options. They're difficult choices to make, which is why I talk about this to young people. It's going to be hard. At a minimum, if you can at least recognize the value of downstream, which is really hard to see, of making these choices now and how that sets you up for success down the road, and you're able to backtrack that and do it in today's world, I think that's the start, at least appreciating what it means to be a person of integrity and to be a person of moral character and what that means to you and those around you. So it is hard. And it's not going to get any easier. It's probably going to get more difficult as we continue to advance technology. It's on the person. It's on the kid listening to this right now who's like, man, I'm following 8,000 people on IG and 7,900 of them make me feel like shit about myself. Well, guess what? You're now down to 100 people. So just wipe the slate, man. You can do that. It'll take you 5 minutes. Wipe the slate. Forget about that. Forget about looking at this and thinking, I need to be in that position now. Like, there's a great expression is you are never late. You're right on time. Always. You are always right on time. It's a philosophical conversation to have, a fun one to have. Forget all that. If you notice that this is causing a negative response, disregard it. I don't care if it's your next door neighbor, this kid you played football with since you were 6 years old, or it's, some social media celebrity, whatever. You own the keys to who is influencing you. It's on you. Can you stop and do an honest inventory of who you have in your community and objectively look at the value they're bringing or the demise they're creating for you? Own it. It's on you. But make the hard choice. I guarantee these individuals that you somehow feel connected to, or you get some dopamine by looking at their stuff and fantasizing about the girls or the guys or the cars or the mansions. 2 weeks down the road, you will not miss them whatsoever. It's just the initial difficulty of getting past it that's the challenge. Do you have the courage to take that first step?
All right. So my next question is, and we only have you for a few more minutes, but what games did you play when you were growing up, or do you play now? And how has it influenced you? And if you haven't gotten there, I will be there to walk you down the path.
It's funny. We talked, pre-recording about this, and you're like, everyone's got a connection with games. And I'm like, everyone's a strong word. Like, I don't know, man. And I've been thinking about it since you like prompted that. And it does exist for me. I don't consider myself a gamer today. I don't own a console. I don't play computer games. Now I did as a young person. And the first connection that I could think of, regular Nintendo was the first gaming system I had. Mario Brothers was like the jam, and it was epic. When I was like, eventually in college, friends had PlayStation and we would play Madden. Madden was the big one, so I was a college athlete, played football. We get on the sticks, as we call it. I don't know if that's a common expression, but at least for me and my goofy buddies, teammates, we were talking about getting on the sticks. It meant the controllers, like who's on the sticks next.
Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast
about playing Madden as college athletes, college football players, about being in these games, one of these days, a far-fetched dream in itself. But the biggest connection that I can think of now is Mario Brothers being the first game. Well, the movie just came out, which is actually really good. The way they scored it was awesome. Like the soundtrack, I got to give these cartoon creators a lot of credit, because the genius in the way that they do the soundtrack, because they make it enticing and interesting to the parents. It's like these classics from like the 70s and 80s. My son's losing his mind. My oldest is 6. He's like all into the Mario, and I'm like jamming out to some of this music. I'm like, this is the greatest movie ever. I was just reliving my childhood. It was a lot of fun. So that's been a really cool, this is just as of recently. My youngest was literally just watching the new Mario Brothers in our living room like 5 minutes ago. He's probably watching it literally right now. So it's ironic that this conversation is happening. Interesting, full circle. That was the introduction to me into video games. It gave me an outlet, again, because I struggled socially. So I had that video game outlet that could provide me some entertainment and some competitiveness, because, I wanted to win as a young person. And, video games have obviously come like light years since the original Mario. But, and I'll just close here, because of the new Super Mario Brothers movie, we did like a Super Mario Brothers birthday when my oldest turned 6 back in April. My wife got this little plug-in console. It looks like a miniaturized version of the original Nintendo, and it's got like 850 original games on it. You plug in, it's got the same exact controller. So me and my son have been playing the original Mario. We've been playing Contra, which was like my jam once that came out, like Commandos, running around. Yeah. We've been actually burning it down the last few weeks with that. So ironic, you and I are talking now. it's kind of come full circle in my own home with my kids. So it's been an interesting little ride here the last, month or two.
So it's that's great. So here is this adventure game where these heroes they go through tunnels, they're digging around, they're grabbing things, and they're fighting enemies. And here we are with a Super Mario hero. Now you are it in the skin doing that stuff for the past 16 years. And now, it comes full circle with your son. And I have a very similar story that we have time with, but that's pretty cool, man. And the Contra, that's your life, man, now. Yeah. So it's a really interesting, dynamic. And, I kind of chalk it up to when you visualize something enough in your mind, everything in your body starts to orient, and then the universe starts to come in, and God puts things in places for you, right? And it just starts to materialize. And video games and esports, it does a really good job of filling in the visualization tools. So that's pretty cool that you're the living, breathing specimen of the games that you played earlier. So that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, it is cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I like
April, what do you got?
One thing, Ken, I think you're amazing at first. I'm just sitting here in awe. I'm usually not this quiet, but I'm like, oh my God, that's such great. I got to write that down. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
I think two of the things you said that really resonate with video games. One, the ability to learn from failure. That's one thing. People are not allowed to fail in this world, but in video games, they fail over and over and over and over again. They look forward to failing. They get better from failing. They look forward to kicking each other's ass. And in other places in this space, that's not allowed in this very politically correct country. So video games open just what you were talking about. And I think the other thing that you said that really resonated with me was, and Ken has said similar things in the past, but you know who you are. Your identity is not what you do. You said, I am a warrior. Everything that doesn't align with I am a warrior doesn't make sense to you. Ken said, I am an elite athlete. Everything that doesn't align with I am an elite athlete, that's not even a reality in his world. And I think that's where you start when you give kids the equation you were talking about. Like, what is the answer? What is 3? If your answer is I am a martial artist, or I am an educator, or I am a warrior, then everything else makes a lot more sense. So getting people to come to that point, and by example, that's what both of you guys are doing. By example, you are telling the policymakers in this administration that there is value, no matter what the physical condition is. There is value in my leadership. There's value in my identity. There's value in my participation in this space. And I think just by being there, you guys you're changing the world. So kudos and many thanks.
Thank you. That's a phenomenal comparison to failure in video games. I never would have thought of that. I'll probably use that material with your permission, of course, April, moving forward. I think it's brilliant and very true. And then I'll just want to put an exclamation point to your second point. And the beautiful thing about this, about identifying what your passion or purpose or meaning is that there's no wrong answer. There is no wrong answer, as long as it's rooted in honesty and a degree of self-awareness. So when you're having that conversation in the mirror and you're asking yourself, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And then you listen to your soul talking to you, which likely is going to show up in the form of a whisper. As much as we would like it to come screaming through the glass and punch us directly in the face, it likely is not going to be that obvious. But if you listen, it will come. But if you don't put it out there, there's no reason for it to come. But I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to find that exact thing now. And it's put it out there, listen. Yeah. If you're being honest with yourself, which can be really difficult in today's social media world, right? We've got this facade that we feel the need to project because of the external judgment and all the things. Forget all that. Forget the filter, forget the post, forget the caption, stop. It's just you and you. There is zero value in lying to yourself. So just stop. Be honest with yourself. What do you actually want to do? What do you actually enjoy? How do you want to make an impact on other people around you? There is no wrong answer. Even if you identify something and then you commit to that and you begin executing, as long as you remain honest, that will likely change. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that the time and energy and even money invested in pursuing that particular thing was wasted. Not at all. I fell into my passion because I made essentially an emotionally charged decision to want to be a service member. That's what it took for me. So there's no wrong answer. Just be honest with yourself, even if it's just with yourself. Put it out there and be willing to listen to what you are telling you.
It's almost that integrity part, going back to integrity, be, true to yourself. Otherwise, everything that you're saying is not reality, and it'll never happen, and it'll come to fruition because you're not being real with yourself. You don't have integrity. You got to have integrity here.
100%.
So Nick, thanks so much, man. And we have to give you back your time for you to go off and do great things around the world. And we greatly appreciate everything you've done and for being here for us and gaining exposure to the esports and gaming communities. We love you, man. I hope to see you back, and I hope to meet you one day. That would just be phenomenal. So thank you for your time.
I'll be looking forward to it as well. I mean, I appreciate the time. I really enjoyed this conversation. Congratulations on the initiative. It's easy for us old timers to look at the kids these days. Oh, these kids, and they're spoiled and they never go outside. And when I was a kid, I'd go outside and get lost and come back when it was dark. And then my mother would kick me out of the house again. It's easy for us, the old people, to have that kind of judgment. Well, two things. One, we're the ones that created all this technology. So stop. Like, if you want to get angry at the 11-year-old that's playing the game, look at yourself in the mirror. We're the ones that built this. Okay. That's one. And two, this is the natural evolution of progress. This is what evolution looks like. You are not going to stop technology. In fact, it's only going to get faster and stronger and more impactful. So if you want to make an impact, you have to exist where the young people are at. And a lot of them are in the space that you guys are at right now. So this is not like nerd video game, like, whatever stuff. This is like the place where most, if not all, of our future leaders in the military, government, corporate, CEO, nonprofit, they're there now, right? So you guys are in the space that can actually create that initial positive influence on these young, impressionable minds. So I give you guys a lot of credit. Let me know if there's anything else I can do for you guys. I look forward to a future conversation. And again, thank you guys for your time today.
Nick, last question. Where can I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to want to learn more. So is there somewhere where you'd send us? And we'll put your socials in our link, but is there somewhere where you'd send them just to learn more about you and your story?
Yeah, the one-stop shop is our website. It's Team Machine. That's MCHN.com. It's got links to the socials and, the merch and the videos and the photos and, and all the things. And more importantly, for me anyway, there's a direct access link to me where I do answer that stuff personally. Sometimes it can take a minute because it can get a little backfilled, but if you got a question or a comment or something's on your mind, reach out and I will respond.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate this. We really appreciate your time and education.
Appreciate it, guys. Good time. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Warrior Gamer out.
Warrior Gamer Headquarters Podcast out.